A group of truckers held a peaceful protest so they can get better work hours and better pay. But instead, they were told something they didn't expect.
Because of President Trump's tariffs, with hard-hit truckers taking another blow.
Some companies are calling them independent contractors. They say that label lowers their pay and locks them out of benefits.
Trucking companies here in the basin are experiencing a shortage in work and in drivers.
What happened to the trucking industry that once promised freedom, good pay, and a life on the open road? How did a career that built America's economy turn into a job filled with long hours, low income, and endless struggles? And with new technologies taking over, is trucking about to change forever? Or has it already? The answers might surprise you. So, let's get into it. The harsh reality of port trucking. The problems with the independent contractor model are most clearly evident at the major ports across America. Imagine being an independent truck driver moving cargo from a ship at Long Beach Harbor to a warehouse just east of Los Angeles. On paper, it might sound like a simple job. Still, it often turns out to be a challenging and frustrating experience. At most ports, drivers regularly face long waits. Port traffic can stretch out for an hour or even longer. To make matters worse, basic facilities like bathrooms are often hard to find. Throughout all this time, drivers are sitting still, using up fuel, and not making any money. The situation became even worse during the COVID-driven consumer boom. News outlets regularly reported significant delays at docks and ports during that time. Some truckers had to wait up to 6 hours to pick up their cargo. Even after waiting so long, many were turned away because they would not have enough time left to make their deliveries in their federally limited 11-hour driving window. So drivers often spend an entire day at work, paying for fuel and other costs, but earning nothing in return. Even though port traffic has improved since then, port trucking was tough before the pandemic. According to a 2019 study by researchers at the University of California, Berkeley, the typical income for a port driver working as an independent contractor was just $28,000 a year. That is extremely low, especially considering that most drivers work far more than the usual 40 hours a week. These harsh working conditions show how deeply the problems with the current system run, especially for independent contractors trying to make a living in one of the most challenging parts of the trucking world. Fracking truckers protest. Far away from California's busy ports, deep in the dusty lands of West Texas, lies the Permian Basin. This area stands at the center of America's oil and fracking operations. Sand is critical to the oil industry. Large amounts are needed to keep oil flowing, and moving that sand from mines to drilling rigs requires a steady stream of trucks and drivers. According to reports, a driver could make $1,200 daily. That could add up to $8,500 in a very productive week. Even though those numbers sound attractive, they hide important details. Companies posting these job ads are not obligated to provide a complete or honest picture of earnings. Since they hire independent contractors, not employees, they can promote the highest possible figures without mentioning the extra costs drivers must handle. Expenses like fuel, maintenance, and downtime quickly eat into those earnings, making the real income much lower than it first appears. Reality caught up quickly for many drivers in the Permian Basin. Many mining sites and oil fields lacked even basic facilities like restrooms. Worse still, drivers spent long unpaid hours trapped in traffic jams. They often waited anywhere from 2 to 24 hours without compensation, either trying to deliver sand to a wellhead or picking up another load at the mine. Rather than making six-figure incomes as promised, most drivers barely made enough to cover their expenses. The gap between the expectations set by job postings and the harsh daily reality exposed just how broken the system had become for many independent truckers in West Texas. Failed system in Permian Basin. Drivers cannot complete enough trips or gather enough miles to make the job financially worthwhile. Yet, despite these obvious issues, there is little real effort to fix the system. Oil companies, sand mines, and third-party logistics businesses have little reason to invest in improvements. They can easily find more drivers willing to work. From their point of view, having a long line of trucks waiting is a good thing. It shows that demand is being met even if drivers sit unpaid for hours. When one frustrated driver decides to leave in search of better opportunities, someone else is always ready to take their place. Often, it is a new owner-operator with a commercial driver's license and an old second-hand truck, motivated by hope and by the significant pay figures promised in job ads. Sadly, many soon discover that the real working conditions are far worse than advertised. Heavy competition for the few decent jobs still exist, combined with wage-depressing practices like misclassification and high turnover rates, shows the deeper problem. Many people still want to drive trucks, but are unwilling to endure poor pay and harsh working conditions forever. Even so, not everyone agrees on why the shortage exists. Different people often point to various reasons depending on their background or the news they follow. Some say it is about pay, others say it is about regulations. Either way, the struggles faced by drivers are growing harder to ignore. The golden age of trucking. The trucking industry in the United States today looks very different from what it once was. There are still some good trucking jobs available, but they have become much harder to find. The competition for these positions has also grown fierce. What people now consider a good trucking job was once just the usual everyday standard in the industry. Looking back at the early days of long-haul trucking in America shows how much things have changed. In those early years, trucking looked more like the old stagecoach days than anything seen today. West of the Mississippi River, there were no real highways. Roads were rough, indirect, and often hard to navigate. Service stations where drivers could refuel or fix their vehicles were few and far between. Drivers mostly traveled on rural paths, and the trucks were very basic. These early trucks could only reach about 40 miles per hour and were prone to constant mechanical problems such as tire blowouts and engine overheating. As the country approached World War I, the need to transport military supplies grew urgent. The railroads were already working at full capacity and could not handle all the extra loads alone. Because of this, trucking technology had to advance quickly. Several major improvements helped transform the industry. Fifth wheels were added to trucks, which made connecting trailers much easier and helped standardize truck sizes. Diesel engines also came into the picture, offering much better fuel efficiency, with trucks getting 25 to 30% more miles per gallon than gasoline engines. Pneumatic tires, which are filled with air, replaced the old solid rubber ones, making the ride smoother and reducing damage to both trucks and the goods they carried. By 1920, about 1 million trucks were already driving on American roads. As technology kept improving and better roads were built, the trucking industry grew stronger. The government soon realized it needed to catch up and create new rules and infrastructure to support this fast-moving sector. Regulation, a double-edged sword. The railroad companies pushed hard for this change because they were losing a lot of business to truckers operating with very few restrictions at the time. The new law brought several major changes. First, it set standard rates for trucking services across different regions and required trucking companies to have special certificates to operate legally. Companies that were already operating before the new rules, like Alco, were automatically granted these certificates. This made it very difficult for new businesses to enter the market. New companies had to go through a complicated process to prove that there was an unmet need before they could even be considered for approval. Some businesses were in a good position to benefit from these new regulations. One example is the United Parcel Service, better known as UPS. The company started in Seattle in 1907 by making foot and bicycle deliveries. Later, it expanded into Oakland, California, and other cities. Over time, UPS introduced consolidated carrier shipping, combining multiple deliveries into one route. When the Motor Carrier Act took effect, UPS had a strong hold on several vital markets nationwide. The new rules made it even harder for new companies to compete with them. Besides controlling who could operate, the government also set up rate bureaus. These organizations decided how much truckers could charge and even limited what kind of cargo they were allowed to carry. In a way, the system mirrored the older rules used for the railroad industry. For example, a farmer in Florida could legally transport their own fruits and vegetables to Cincinnati, Ohio, but they were not allowed to carry alcohol from a business in nearby Covington, Ohio, back to Florida. The farmer was classified as a produce carrier, and the rules prohibited them from transporting anything else. These regulations were originally meant to create a fair playing field and protect drivers and companies alike. However, over time, they made trucking much more expensive for the average consumer. Studies showed that freight costs were about 1/3 to 1/2 higher than they might have been without all the government controls. As frustrations grew among drivers, companies, and customers, it became clear that something had to change. The owner-operator trap. While government regulations once shaped who could drive and what could be hauled, the relaxation of those rules opened the door for many new players. However, this freedom came with new challenges, and not all of them worked out well for the drivers themselves. A strange and troubling situation took shape after the trucking industry became less regulated in the 1980s. Trucking has never been more important to the American economy than it is today, but it has also never been a tougher job for many drivers. There are different ways to group truckers. Some are classified based on the distance they drive, ranging from local short trips to long-haul journeys across states. Others are sorted by the type of loads they carry, whether fracking sand for oil fields or consumer goods from giant warehouses. Truckers can also be grouped by how they operate, from running their own one-person business to being part of a large fleet that uses slip seating, where multiple drivers share the same truck. Their licenses differ, with commercial driver's licenses divided into Class A, B, or C. However, understanding the root of trucking's problems helps to examine how drivers are paid and taxed. Some receive a 1099 form, which means they are treated as independent contractors. Others get a W-2 form, which means they are regular employees. In 2022, about 3.5 million truckers worked in the United States. Out of that number, around 1.7 million, nearly half, were owner-operators. These drivers fit the classic image of the independent trucker, often compared to cowboys on the open road. They own and take care of their trucks, set their own schedules, and choose the loads they want to carry, at least. That is the idea in theory. In reality, things are much more complicated. Buying and maintaining a truck today costs a lot of money. Meanwhile, customer expectations have become much higher. Fast, precise deliveries are no longer a bonus, but a basic requirement. As a result, many so-called owner-operators are not as independent as they seem. Out of those 1.7 million owner-operators, only 44% actually work under their own authority, fully controlling their business. Another 45% lease their services to motor carrier companies. This setup means that about 765,000 truckers, more than 20% of the workforce, carry the title of owner-operator or independent contractor, but work directly for logistics companies. These companies handle all the complex planning, provide the containers and trailers, and sometimes even offer the trucks themselves. The line between true independence and regular employment becomes blurry in such situations. Sadly, the drivers often end up on the losing side, carrying the costs and responsibilities of business ownership without getting the full rewards that should come with it. Legal battles over independent truckers. For the past decade, labor groups, the Teamsters Union, drivers, and lawyers have been challenging what it means to be an independent contractor in the trucking world. Many argue that drivers working under companies like XPO Logistics are not independent. The turnover rate in large long-haul trucking companies is around 90%. That means 9 out of every 10 drivers leave a company within a year. While illegal misclassification of drivers explains part of the problem, the issues run even deeper. The structure of the trucking industry itself, where many drivers carry the burden of ownership without absolute independence, has made the job harder, less stable, and far less rewarding than it once was. Automation, the next big shift. While legal battles and industry struggles continue, another force is quietly reshaping the future of trucking. This time, it is not about who drives, but whether a driver is needed at all. Change, both inevitable and revolutionary, is clearly on the horizon. In late 2024, a significant milestone was reached in the Permian Basin. 2 fully driverless trucks, built to haul sand, successfully started running commercial routes along quiet, private roads. Other companies are moving quickly, too. One major competitor has announced plans to begin fully autonomous trucking operations between Houston and Dallas in April 2025. However, even as technology improves, it will not replace human drivers overnight. Progress will likely move slowly, with periods of rapid growth followed by setbacks. In the meantime, trucking will remain increasingly complex for those still behind the wheel. The real question is whether the industry can manage this shift in a way that protects good-paying jobs. Will companies find ways to expand solid fleet positions and support the small group of profitable owner-operators? Or will the move toward automation make an already harsh industry even harder for the people still trying to make a living in it? Let us know in the comments below. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe for more easy-to-understand videos like this one. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.